Shooters often have spaceships, large bases, a mechanical feel, so it's quite refreshing to see the controllable character in Dragon Spirit to be, well, a blue dragon. In the game, your mission is to rescue a princess who is about to be sacrificed by Zowl, the Demon of Darkness. To find her, you must blast your way through 8 areas, including mountain flatlands, volcanoes, jungles, deserts, caves, glaciers, and finally the Demon Palace. Along the way, you'll encounter some strange creatures who apparently are not very big fans of blue dragons, and a bunch of obstacles such as exploding volcanoes, gates made of ice, and even spiky walls that slowly close in. Your dragon has 2 methods of attack. Button 2 releases Dragon Breath, and Button 1 drops fireballs to the ground. They can both be used at the same time, which is great. But be careful with your placement of the turbo switches because it can mess up how the shots look on the screen if used together. It's kinda weird and a bit of a bummer. My advice, turbo switch on for button 2, off for 1, except for a few choice end bosses. Power-ups can be obtained by smashing eggs on the ground or destroying flashing enemies. Capturing the red power-ups will eventually increase the power of your Dragon Breath. And the blue power-ups will add another head to your dragon, up to a total of 3. This also increases your number of bombs. Of course, getting hit just once knocks your power down a notch, and this is Dragon Spirit Bummer number 2. Your character is such a huge target, so good luck keeping yourself powered up for more than a second. Oftentimes, the flashing enemies will drop magical power-ups, including a Homer spell, the Invincibility Power Wing, 1-ups, well, I should say a third of a 1-up, as you need 3 to hatch the 1-up egg on the screen, and a few others. One I have to focus on is the Reducer spell, which is awesome because it shrinks your character down, making it much easier to navigate. To defeat this game, it's almost necessary to snag this icon, especially in later stages where your large hitbox just doesn't fit. But guess what? One hit or accidental pickup of another power-up and poof, it's all gone. Oh, and you also have to love the decrease power icon that shows up right when you can't maneuver away. Bummer. At the beginning, the look of Dragon Spirit is often plain and lacking detail. After the first stage, you'll reach lava and ice levels, which really show off the color capabilities and do look much, much better. I always liked the animation in your character. I thought he looked really, really cool. It could use a few improvements in the graphics department, but it's a port of an arcade game which also was a bit ugly at times. So I guess in comparison, we're pretty much on par with the look. The sound is pretty close to the arcade version, with a little extra punch in the music. In fact, I'd have to say the music is great and has really, really catchy tunes. The sound effects are a bit boring, however, and could have used that extra oomph that was obviously given to the music. The controls are pretty solid, but, and I know this is just the design of the game itself, I wish the dragon moved around faster. The speed up icon does help, but the dragon is just extremely sluggish. Otherwise, switching between shooting in the air and bombing the ground works pretty well as long as you're careful with those turbo switches. In the late 80s, I dropped many an arcade quarter into Dragon Spirit. In fact, I owned the slightly reworked Nintendo Entertainment System version of the game first. I didn't grab the TurboGrafx port, which was released during its launch year, until much, much later. The home versions I always found somewhat difficult because of reasons we already covered, as well as a few other things that kick you squarely in the dragon behind. You get 3 hits per life, and when you die, I'll admit, the game is quite sympathetic and sends you back to a very nearby checkpoint. But the problem is the game never refills your life bar. Ever. And on top of that, you have 0 continues. Bummer. In most games, fully powered up means domination, and it does here too. This end boss not fully powered up, this end boss powered up. Oh yeah. But once you become a larger target than you already are, it's not all necessarily in your favor. Dragon Spirit is a fun little shooter with some really cool enemies that offer unique patterns, and a few inspiring moments in level design. The game is not very intense and plays really slow most of the time, but the extra added difficulties end up making it harder than it seems. So the question is, how much punishment do you love? If you get off on that kind of thing, then it does have some good replay value. You'll find every playthrough will get you farther and farther, but it requires patience and it's a slow process getting there. I have to admit, I have a soft spot for this game. But seriously, does that 1-up high score thing have to blink all the time? 2 words. Bomb-er. Dragon Spirit is a unique shooter, and aside from missing the intro and a bizarre reworking of the final stages, the TurboGrafx port is a pretty faithful rendition of the arcade classic. I personally get burned out on the game after a while, but I still recommend it as there is some addiction to be found. If you can get past some of the bummers, then grab Simple Jack, because it's time for some flaming dragons.